Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Bangladesh Army Chief confirms Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, says an interim government will be formed to run the country. War clouds hang over West Asia. The US says military moves in to de-escalate tensions. Anti-immigrant protests rise in the UK in the aftermath of a stabbing incident as far-right groups spread disinformation campaign. And the closest ever photo finish in the men's 100-meter sprint final in the Olympics in Paris. Noah Lyles of the United States wins the gold by 5,000th of a second. Well, in the latest development from Bangladesh, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned. She's left her residence in Dhaka. She's left the country. The Bangladesh Army Chief Wakar-uz-Zaman in a statement said that the Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and an interim government will be formed to look into the running of the country. Let's listen.
Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina has resigned and an interim government has been formed to look at the state of affairs. Keep patience, give us some time. We will be able to find solution to all the problems confronting the country. Please don't take the path of confrontation and return to the path of peace. It is taking a lot of toll on our country in terms of economy and the finances, which have gone down. People are dying, and let me assure you, I will take all the responsibility and a solution will be found.
Well, protesting students had occupied the streets of the capital Dhaka in a long march to Dhaka program, and the protesters were giving flowers, in fact, to the army personnel when reports last came in, with around 90 people killed in fresh clashes in protests across Bangladesh and a curfew imposed for an indefinite period of time. The anti-discrimination student movement, it announced that it was going to hold that March to Dhaka program. These are images of violent protests, but in view of the ongoing developments in Bangladesh, the Indian nationals have been strongly advised against traveling to that country till further orders or further notices. And the Ministry of External Affairs has said that all Indian nationals presently in Bangladesh are advised to exercise extreme caution, to restrict their movements and to remain in contact with the High Commission of India in Dhaka through the emergency telephone numbers. Those emergency telephone numbers, I can read them out to you, but I hope that they will be on the screen as well. But they are plus 880 195 838 3679, plus 880 195 838 3680, plus 880 193 740-0591. Right, and so these are the latest developments. In fact, as per reports, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was given a 45-minute ultimatum. Some reports suggested that for her to resign and leave the country, which is what she has done. And we did hear the Army Chief, Wakar-uz-Zaman, who did come on air and then asked for calm. He did confirm that Sheikh Hasina has resigned. There has been a strong build-up to this moment. It has been going on, brewing since the first protest that had begun over reservations. That was overturned by the Supreme Court. People thought that things would reach a calm. but then they resurfaced once again. Amit Pal Singh is joining us live for more on this story. Amit, you know, the last time something like this happened, well, I mean, that we saw a military coup in Bangladesh. It worked out very badly for Sheikh Hasina's family. She was one of two survivors. You know, her father was assassinated. I'm talking about the first time in 1975. You know, this is obviously bringing a lot of tension and fear, bringing back those incidents.
The comparisons, Mark, are bound to be drawn between what happened today and what happened on the 15th of August 1975, when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh, was assassinated, and the army staged the coup and the army general took over. But this clearly, I mean, it is a political crisis. That's as far as the similarity goes. But there are political crises of very different nature. While that was clearly an army coup, this is not directly an army coup. The army may not have stood, with Sheikh Hasina. She might have wanted the army to go the whole hog, but clearly it wasn't a coup. They are the ones who have safely transported her out of the country. She left in a military helicopter. Clearly, the army chief, when he met with opposition party leaders, so the army clearly has played a role. And some are saying that if the army really so willed, they could have, quelled the protests by use of force, because the army, the level of protests or the number of protesters could have only been handled by the use of military force. But Sheikh Hasina would have perhaps wanted that, but the army would have cautioned her against it, saying, the legitimacy of the institution of the military will come into question, because she had clearly become very, very unpopular. So what started as a students' movement did turn into, disenchantment with her government, her style of functioning, the way she handled the crisis.
Right.
As I said, so this is the essential difference between what happened in 1975 and what happened today, Mark.
But what perhaps tilted the scales against her was August 4, that just yesterday, when the army decided to take the sides of the students. Probably the writing was on the wall, though she did use strong language, as she has been using against the protesters, which has only been, fueling resentment amongst them, to try and, it actually fueled the crisis. First she called them Razakars, and then now she's called them terrorists.
Absolutely. Using words like Razakars and terrorists for students. Of course, there is no denying the fact that there was politics behind what was going on, but there was surely a high-handedness on part of Sheikh Hasina, which finally proved to be an undoing. Sheikh Hasina, 15 years in power, probably thought that she'll be able to handle this, quell the protests, and she did not see this as a legitimate student movement. She had her reasons for it. The matter was, the judiciary was seized of the matter, but Sheikh Hasina, given her political experience, could have deftly handled it. But Sheikh Hasina clearly, as many popular leaders also make mistakes, she made the mistake of thinking that she could quell this protest with a heavy hand, and clearly the institutions, especially the institution of the army, did not agree with her style of functioning, and probably the army chief would have convinced her that it's time for her to go, lest things get out of hand and the life of her own life and the life of her family come into danger. So they would have told Sheikh Hasina that now is the time to get off the line. The problem with riding the line is that the moment you get off the line, it eats you up. So the army here at least has been able to whisk her out of the country and save her life. But yes, the political legacy of Sheikh Hasina,
right,
at least for the moment, has come into question. Mark.
Right. We're also joined by Naal Singh Parmar, correspondent who is based in Dhaka. Naal Singh, first give us an update on the situation on the ground. After that, we'll try and unpack, the background to it.
Actually, अभी लेटेस्ट अपडेट जो मिल रहा है और Bangladesh. Sorry, I was on DD News, so I
Yes,
continue.
yes, go ahead.
As per the latest update, Bangladesh Prime Minister, Eastwell Prime Minister now, Sheikh Hasina has resigned. That is confirmed by the Army Chief of Bangladesh. And as you can see, make out from the visuals that the peoples from all walk of life gathered in Dhaka, and many people, the lakhs of people, marched to Dhaka from different parts of the Bangladesh, particularly the northern part of Bangladesh, Memon Singh and other towns of the Bangladesh. Many people came to Dhaka, and up to 12 p.m. there were a resistance from army and law enforcement agency to restrict the crowd on roads, and they were not allowing people to enter in Dhaka. But after certain point of time, army stop resisting people, and in thousands of people entered in Dhaka, and there were already a huge crowd on street of Dhaka before the other people came from other parts of the Bangladesh. And the visuals are coming that the crowds, people, general people, thrown open the gates of the Gana Bhavan, which is the official residence of Bangladesh Prime Minister, and they took charge of the Gana Bhavan. And after that, we saw the press conference or address to nation by the Army Chief just half an hour back. Before that, Army Chief had a meeting with the all party representatives, all political parties representatives, and then after he addressed the media, and that news. Already yesterday night there were updates that the Army Chief will address the nation at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. But then it postponed due to that meeting, and he addressed it around 4 p.m. local time.
So can you tell us a little bit about the interim government he said that is formed? He's asked for peace and calm. You did say that the crowds have been allowed to take over certain important places. There has been vandalism, as we see on the screens, in of important monuments. This is a situation that seems a little out of control. As far as law and order is concerned, I mean, currently, is the government seized of the matter?
Yes, as far as law and order things are concerned, now the only army who is having control of the, who can control the situation, because there were a huge anger against the police force and Awami League party workers and activists. I want to make one point here that when the student agitator or coordinators of the agitator on Saturday evening held address a huge gathering of people at Shahid Minar, Central Shahid Minar in Dhaka on Saturday evening. At that time, they make a point that now onwards, we are switching from 9-point demand to 1-point demand. And the 1-point demand was resignation, their 1-point demand was to have a resignation of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina led government. And second part of that point was a formation of national government. So it is the demand of agitators, demand of the students and the common people that we want to have a national government, no other party directly or army. Or one more thing, very recent, I gone through the many social media updates and videos of the coordinator, the leaders or coordinators of the movement, that we don't want army rule in Bangladesh. We don't. They trust army. They have a faith on army, but they made it clear that we don't want army rule in Bangladesh.
Yes, Amrit, I can see you putting your hand up. Yeah, come in. You're coming. I can't hear you, Amrit.
Mark, can you hear me now?
Go ahead, yes.
Mark, if you permit me, can I ask Naal Singh if you can hear my question? What are you hearing, Naal Singh? What would be the contours of this national government? Most importantly, would Awami League, now that Sheikh Hasina and her party are discredited, would Awami League be a part of the national government?
Actually, Sheikh Hasina was leading a coalition government of 14 parties.
Right.
Though he was having a majority by of his own parties, Awami League, but there was a coalition of 14 parties in Bangladesh, and that was ruling the country. Second thing, in the national government, as in some other channel also, I saw the visuals that there were no participation of the Awami League leaders during the national address of Army Chief. And someone questioned that why Awami League is not there at the stage while Army Chief is addressing the nation. So I would like to make clear here that in last 20 days or after 16th of July, there were a huge anger against the Awami League party and its party worker. So there were two group of people who were a target of the protester, and that were the police. Police, and second one is Awami League and its organization, other organizations, activists. So in such a situation where the lakhs of people are running and marching on the roads of Dhaka with sticks and rod in their hand, it is difficult for the Awami League leaders or party men to be present at such a critical or juncture of the development.
No, but then, Naal Singh Parmar, the question is that, fine, they were not present and perhaps that is the reason, but the anger against the Awami League persists. The big question is, would it be acceptable to the people of Bangladesh that Awami League is a part of the new national government? What is the sense that you're picking on the ground?
Actually, I am here since last 1 year, and I covered the national election here in that happened in January 2014. So I have seen that when election was happening, that opposition party, main opposition, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, boycotted the election. They didn't fill their candidates in the election. And they gave multiple time national blockade and national band kind of thing. But at that time, only the activists of opposition party were on street. And at the same time, ruling party also gave the rally, announced rally or blockade kind of thing against the BNP. So there were only political activists on the road. But now, in this moment, the people's common people, students led, leadership was from student, but the common people were on the street. I want to make it clear that in this scenario, during this time, Awami League popularity came down heavily. At the same time, it directly didn't get benefit BNP also. BNP not that much popular here in Bangladesh right now.
Mr. Parmar and Amrit, I'll ask you to just hold your thoughts a little bit. We are joined by Professor Sanjay from the School of International Studies, JNU. He's also following developments in Bangladesh. Professor Bardwaj, the last time we saw something like this similar, but that was because of economic reasons happening in Sri Lanka, where Gotabaya Rajapaksa was forced out of office. Here, I mean, the reasons are many. What do you think? I mean, after all, she was an elected leader, as Mr. Parmar was saying. In January, she won the elections, even though the opposition boycotted. But she seemed to have had the sort of popular mandate for a lengthy period of time.
Mark, let me put you a very, very interesting fact. Bangladesh, sometimes you do find they are very ungrateful to number of things. Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman was behind the victory or behind the independence of Bangladesh, but he has been assassinated in 1975. Then Ziaur Rahman came, but he has also been assassinated in 1981. So, Sheikh Hasina came into power in 2008 on the mandate that there is a call for change. And this change is from the darkness to the brightness. We will instate the spirit of 1971 and I'll bring the development. I think she has been doing far better on the issue of development she has tried to transform Bangladesh. Bangladesh is graduating from LDC to the developing countries by 2026. The per capita income is better than many of South Asian countries. Human Development Index is better than. But here the problem the scenario and the things had come differently. In fact, the issue of quota, that is, you can put it in the socio-economic or social justice issue. That has been for last 6 years, you can see in 2018, the situation was that there were protests and the government has withdrawn that, yes, there will be no quota for the freedom fighters. But this has been from 2018 to 2026 going, but the appellate court had come out with the decisions to give 30% quota to the freedom fighters. And I think that has been mishandled by the government, though the protesters, the students and the government was on the same page, but it could not, and they have tried to suppress the protest by coerce. And the way the Sheikh Hasina came, the statements putting the protesters as equal to the Rajakars who participated in the anti-liberation war forces, supported the Pakistan. She has identified, she has given the name of these protesters as Rajakars and terrorists and criminals. I think this has backfired and the country has gone on the path of violence. And once the country has gone on the path of violence, you can see that the result is that she has to leave the country. She has to resign from the post of prime minister, and so that the anguish of socio-economic anguish has been transformed into the political anguish and dissatisfaction of the people. And now the people has occupied what you have correctly pointed out, that what happened in Sri Lanka, that the people had reached on President House. Here the people has reached to the Prime Minister House. But now what is the next? Do you feel that while you are talking, you are gaining goals, and you did not meet the values of democracy? Do you feel that the army or army-backed caretaker government or interim government will meet the expectations? What the value we are talking about, the human rights, about the democracy, people's participations? How the army will become the guard of democracy? I'm still wondering, because
there's an interim government in place. Professor Bharadwaj, there's an interim government. We still don't know the details of it. It's supposed to be a national government, as Mr. Naal Singh Parmar was talking about. We turn to him once again. Mr. Parmar, also the judiciary played an important role in the earlier riots by trying to, coming up with a decision that seemed to be in favor of the rioters, that their demands about 93% of the seats would be reserved for general merit. Is there any sign that they're going to take suo motu action once again?
No, I don't find such kind of any action from the judiciary. In fact, the quota movement started with the action of judiciary only. In 2018, there were a mini version of quota movement in 2018 in which people came on street demanding the scrapping of quota for the freedom fighters dissidents. And at that time, by executive order, government stopped providing quotas in the class 1 and class 2, means group A, group B services to the freedom fighters dissident. Then after some aggrieved party filed a petition in the High Court of Bangladesh, and on 5th June, High Court gave a verdict scrapping the executive order of the government, which has stopped providing quota in class 1-2 job for the freedom fighters dissident. So in this way, this issue is initiated with the action of judiciary only. Then again, government filed an appeal against this verdict of the High Court on 1st of July. And on the 16th July, when the major people took occupied the university area, and many people joined the protest movement, and as another panelist said, that some casual remarks from the political leaders flare up the entire agitation. Then again, government appealed Supreme Court through the Attorney General of Bangladesh for the early hearing. And in that hearing, Appeal Division of Bangladesh High Court, it means we can say the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, gave a verdict scrapping or reducing quota from 56%. Total, it was a 56%, including 30% for the dissidents of the freedom fighters. 56% to 7%, in which 5% for the dissidents of the freedom fighter, excluding the third grandchildren of the freedom fighter. Earlier, they were also included. So, in a way, judiciary gave a verdict, and after that the situation became a little bit peaceful. But in that 2 weeks, last 10 days of month of July, police and law enforcement agency arrest lots many people who were part of the agitation, including students.
High-handedness, you're saying. Let me turn once again to we have correspondents. I mean, you're of course our main correspondent since you're on the field there, but we have people following the story from different angles. Let me turn to Jessica Taneja. She's also following the story in the global media. Jessica, I mean, how is the world looking at this event? I mean, at the happenings, not the event.
Well, certainly it has not come as a surprise, but what has shocked many people is Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, and of course now leaving the country, and her whereabouts remain unknown or unconfirmed at this point because she's on board with her sister. So of course these developments are being viewed around the world. We will soon get statements from the State Department as well as from Britain and other countries who are watching this situation closely. As another country in the neighborhood, it was Pakistan a few months back, if you recall, and Sri Lanka last year with the economic crisis in 2002, and how things panned so differently for the neighborhood there, and now Bangladesh, and of course not improving in terms of the situation on ground, the peace and stability not intact at this point. Although you heard from the army chief a while ago where he said that a new interim government will be formed and efforts will be made to quell the protests, to assure the protesters as to what they're demanding. Now, Mark, if you'd recall, just a bit of context for our viewers who are just tuning in and probably watching this news for the first time, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and is now not in the country. All of this started with anti-quota protests, as we discussed at length, and then soon turned into anti-government protests, eventually leading to the dissolution of a government, and she now resigning. The army chief has not said that the army will take control or this is any kind of a coup. All those reports have been dismissed. But an interim government where the chiefs of various parties will be present. We're told in the next 5 to 7 hours, we could hear more details on how at least the political formation would look like to bring in some stability and some rest in a country that has been reeling under protest for the last 1 month. More than 300 people have died, Mark, and 100 people just yesterday. That speaks volumes from a country that has been seeing economic distress for a very long time. This has not just been about political unrest, but also about economic distress and, of course, quotas.
Right, let's go across to Ramesh Ramachandran, who's joining us also from the newsroom with more. Ramesh, I mean, as Jessica was saying, the situation is largely economic problems in the surrounding countries of India. Pakistan, Bangladesh, in fact, was an outlier to some extent. It was one of the fast-growing economies, but seems to have fallen into hard times again. And then there is Sri Lanka down south. How is this, playing out in terms of India's neighborhood?
Well, Mark, as you correctly mentioned, there are, we can draw a number of parallels with what is happening in Bangladesh as we speak. You mentioned Sri Lanka, you mentioned other countries in India's neighborhood. Another parallel could be the 2011 Arab Spring. This could be, in a sense, the Bangladesh or Dhaka Spring, where a popular government, elected government at that, has been overthrown. The Prime Minister has quit and resigned and left the country already. A destination, as Jessica was mentioning, is still not confirmed. There are reports that she could be traveling to a neighboring country onward to a country of her choice somewhere else, possibly in Europe. So a lot of, as the American saying go, there are moving parts of the story, but this is extraordinary, Mark. Cataclysmic, seminal, watershed moment in Bangladesh history, coming as it does, barely days before the anniversary of the 15th August 1975 assassination and coup against Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, whose daughter happens to be Sheikh Hasina nonetheless. Now, that said, the army chief is very clear. He wants to stabilize things as quickly as possible. He set a deadline, to talk to the president and form an interim government as early as possibly tonight or tomorrow. We've had to wait and watch how things pan out. But as things stand now, Mark, This is nothing short of unprecedented. An anti-quota protest morphing into an anti-government protest, encompassing a large section of society, including students, activists, actors, academics, professors, jurists. And this, we are talking, by the way, of Sheikh Hasina, who is the longest-serving PM of Bangladesh. She came to power in '96. Ruled for the first time, for the first term till 2001, and then from 2009 onwards, she has won every consecutive election. She has been in power for 15 years and counting until the protesters stormed the residence and forced her out of power.
Indeed, let's get some more perspective from Professor Bharadwaj, who's with us. Professor Bharadwaj, can you hear us? You were saying something and we couldn't hear it. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, can you repeat the question?
No, actually, I was just trying to ask you to comment on developments, but you know, when I'll put it into more focus, we've seen that Sheikh Hasina has been a popular leader. Now you had brought in the issue of what is this interim government going to be like, whether it can immediately, you know, contain the situation, create a, you know, sort of bring law and order back into place. Is this, in your opinion, how is this going to be possible? How is it going to do? How is this going to play out?
No, she has been popular on her economic policies and economic performance, the way she has brought the development in the country. She has been considered like she has brought the pride of Bangladesh by building Poda Bridge, Kanpuli Tunnel, and number of other projects and ports and all that. But politically, she has been criticized by the opponents, particularly on the issue of democracy, that she's not promoting grassroots democracy. She's promoting moreover nepotism, and she's not conducting union parishads and municipal elections in Bangladesh. That has, and further, it has been criticized in 2014 the elections where the opposition political party has boycotted it. Now, point is that while interim government would be there, who will join the interim government? Both the BNP's social constituency is army. The Jamaat-e-Islam has been known as anti-liberation force. Jamaat-e-Islam has been known for mushrooming fundamentalism and extremism in Bangladesh. The Jatiya Party is again a party has been founded by the military regime. So my point is there that if there is really a neutral and independent civil society people becomes the caretaker government's member, then that it would go well. And the army will take care. Like the Fakhruddin Ahmed was the chief advisor of the caretaker government in 2006 to 2008. They have come out with good number of policies, particularly against the extremists and fundamentalists and corruptions and all that, and many of the leaders behind the bar. So if this government would also come out with these policies and will definitely look forward these kinds of cleansing operations and satisfy the youth. They are demanding for jobs, they are demanding for employment, they are demanding that there should be less inflation and the people should have find the basic goods and good essential goods on the affordable price. So is that interim government will be in position to do? These are the big questions that we'll see that how much the mandate the interim government will have to survive in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has the history of the coup and counter coup. You can see that 75, 76, 70, and then after Irshad also, and then there were the movement against Irshad, and none of the governments were safe. Though the Sheikh Hasina has given relative or comparative stability to the government, and because of that comparative stability, that number of the investors had attracted towards Bangladesh for the developmental projects. So I'm still looking forward to have a stable government in Bangladesh, and how much this interim government will protect the ethos and values of democracy, will conducting a free and fair election. So these are the bigger questions that I'm looking, and how the West would look that to ensure the human rights and democracy in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh, you know, they love change. They love to change time and again. They revolted Irshad. They revolted against Sheikh Khalida Zia in 2006, and they now revolted against Sheikh Hasina. So who will be next? If they are coming really a genuine third front and progressive and development lover liberal people in Bangladesh, then definitely Bangladesh you can see a better future in the case of democracy. But otherwise, you know, there will be the political instability, and that would adversely impact on the economic development of Bangladesh.
So let's take the questions you've raised or the situation you've raised to Naal Singh Parmar, who's our correspondent in Dhaka. The political vacuum, Mr. Parmar. So that's, I mean, and there are some parties that are already supported by the army. Jessica was saying that there is actually no army coup. So I mean, at the end of the day, who's taking over that political shape? I mean, the political vacuum, that space. Who's taking that space in this interim government?
Actually, there are two sets of political party. One is centered around Awami League, and they were the coalition partner of the Awami League government in the Sheikh Hasina lead government, and there were 14 parties. And the second group of political party is aligned with the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party. In this period, in the last 1 year, I have observed that the political credibility of Awami League due to anti-incumbency and for the Bangladesh Nationalist Party due to its away from ground reality, politics away from ground reality. So Awami League lead coalition were facing a anti-incumbency. At the same time, BNP, they were looking up towards the power, not towards down for the common people. What common people are suffering, what they are facing, BNP was not seeing, and I have never seen any protest or rally against the price rise, against the unemployment, against the devaluation of Taka from the main opposition party during election or before 6 months before election. In last 2 years, the economic factors, the developmental agenda of Sheikh Hasina, people appreciate it, and I also appreciate, but there are two parts. One is mega project, and second is pro-poor or pro-people development activity. So in last 2 years, Taka, earlier it was equivalent to rupees, 75 to 80 Taka a dollar, and at that time rupees was also same position, means Taka and rupees were more or less equivalent. In last 2 years, Taka devaluated to 124. Now in crepe market, it is 125 Taka per dollar. And rupees is at 80 rupees. Means you can see the 45, around 50% devaluation or of Taka compared to rupees. So purchasing power of people reduced very hugely. And the salary, in last 2 years, the salary component of the common people, earlier also a common minimum salary was around 8,000 rupees. And after these 2 years also, it is around 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 rupees per a month. So the devaluation of Taka, very high inflation, and the scarcity of employment opportunity, these were the major factor. There were many mega projects which are constructed by under the Sheikh Hasina regime, and that changed the landscape of Bangladesh. That I agree. Mega project has done very well, but at the same time, in last 5 years, most of the mega projects are funded by the foreign countries, and Bangladesh took a huge loan from the wealthy countries, our neighbor also, and due to that, the debt servicing of Bangladesh, which is increased a lot in last 2 years. So the whatever the revenue generated by the government, most of that was being used to fund some mega project, and at the same time for the debt servicing. And with this mega project, corruption increased manifold. So you might have heard about the media reports that the former army chief of Bangladesh, former police chief of Bangladesh have been freed the country, and their property have been confiscated under the corruption charges. So there is a rampant corruption, and the people were tired of the corruption, inflation, and unemployment. So they were not against the Hasina government before 2 years. But in last 2 years, the public perception changed a lot. At the same time, opposition party was never talking about their flight, their issue. So common people don't have much expectation from the opposition also. Meanwhile, the religion-based some organization were spreading their legs and arms in the fertile
Right.
ground for the religious agenda. But most of the common people around, I can say that more than 70% of the common people, they are
Right.
not with the Awami League or they are not with the BNP. They want a third front kind of thing. Something new will be there, and their role model is Indian democracy.
Fair enough.
Many people say that we
That's
should have a democracy like India.
Thanks for that very in-depth response, Mr. Parmar. It gives us plenty to talk about. Let me turn to Ramesh Ramachandran once again. Ramesh, Mr. Parmar was talking about politics that's, divorced of reality, the ground reality. The parties didn't seem to understand the real problems that the people were facing. Do you see this as a time when perhaps non-state actors could perhaps start fishing in troubled waters?
Well, it should not come as a surprise, Mark, that forces inimical to Dhaka's interests will try to fish in troubled waters. There can be no surprises there. And we saw that in the case of the students' protests. Remember, the Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP students' wing were mixed, intertwined with the the other protesters who were drawn from various colleges and universities. So some opposition involvement will always be there, and it has been in the case of the recent protests as well. But that said, Mark, the big question that Naal Singh was mentioning, look where Bangladesh was until very recently. This is a prime minister who was elected as recently as 11th of January this year, and barely 7 months later, she has been ousted from power. And this is a country which was doing economically reasonably better than its neighbors.
Right.
It was to graduate from the LDC country to a middle-income country in the next couple of years. So things were looking up. Things were not that bleak or as bleak as some people made it out to be. But what got the government in trouble was its response to the anti-quota protest to begin with. It saw that the anti-quota protests were primarily targeted by its political opponents, namely the BNP and the BNP students' wing and the Jamaat-e-Islami. But the fact remains that this student movement morphed into something bigger, something of a civil disobedience movement against the government, and that, I think, was to become to the undoing of the government of the day in Dhaka, led by the Prime Minister Hasina. Now, where does Bangladesh go from here? It's a million-dollar question, Mark. Like the army chief said, everything depends on the president, whether he agrees to the proposal to form an interim government, possibly led by a jurist, as has been in the past when a caretaker government was in power in Bangladesh. It remains to be seen, but the army chief, for one, is trying to extend an olive branch to the protesters, saying, please stop your violence, trust the army to do the right thing, and we will get back to you at the earliest after talking to the president and also in touch with the other political parties, all shades of public and political opinion that exists in Bangladesh.
Right. Let's turn once again to Jessica, who's also following the story. Jessica, from the point of view of the political space, it seems that the people on the street don't seem to like any political party. So in that kind of a situation, in this kind of a vacuum, now that the army seems to be in control, I mean, it could be just an interim phase till things improve. But it's a pretty fluid situation, isn't it? There's neither confirmation nor denial that this could continue for a reasonable period of time.
Well, absolutely. Uncertainty still prevails on the ground in many parts of the country at this point, as you and I speak, Mark. And if you see the protesters on the streets, as you and I are talking right now, there have been various times and various instances where the mobs have taken over or, torched houses of the politicians. Not to forget a lot of, Awami League officials, their official residences in Dhaka were torched. The national broadcaster of Bangladesh was also lit up just few weeks ago when the protests had started. So of course the situation not getting under control at all, but with the protesters initially demanding Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, which is something they have got now, the path to stability will not be smooth, and to tell the protesters that the situation will be improved in a sense where their demands will be clearly met, especially with the quota system, well, that the Supreme Court took care of last week when the protests did come down. But again, with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's meetings and her suggestions and her response to the protests, as also Ramesh was pointing out, exactly that has what led Bangladesh to this point, which nobody of course had expected. But the situation right now unfolding suggests that these protests would somehow come to a rest, as now the army has assured that the president will make sure a caretaker government is going to take care of most of the issues that currently trouble the protesters. And of course, the leaders of various parties who have joined in from the anti-quota protest and now anti-government protests. With the absence of Sheikh Hasina, things could normalize, but again, uncertainty prevails, and there could be those elements who will try and fish in troubled waters, as we were discussing earlier.
We'll turn once again to Professor Bharadwaj. Professor Bharadwaj, is this the the end of the political road as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, or is there some sort of goodwill? After all, she has done a lot of work, as you were saying as well, as Naal Singh was saying, in terms of building infrastructure. She has ruled the country. She's one of the most popular leaders for a reasonable period of time. As things, if things settle down, perhaps people will reflect back and say, she has some good qualities.
I do have one very, very particular, very specific reference here. While you were talking to the Bangladeshi people, they had very less grievances against Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman. And while you were coming with the Sheikh Hasina, the people were not much unhappy with the Sheikh Hasinas, but people were more unhappy with her associates, the other party men, Qadir, Pukran, all these leaders. They were more involved in corruption. That whole Awami League, student wing, Chhatra League was also involved in goonism and vandalism and all that. So I think that unpopularity is not will not go in the account of Sheikh Hasina. It would go to the other political leaders. So there are opportunities, there is chance that in future there will be free and fair elections, because the country will remember Sheikh Hasina. As the country remembers Bangabandhu for the freedom or for the independence, the people will remember Sheikh Hasina for her developmental projects. And I'm sure that there will be free and fair elections, and there will be a time then she will come back and she will rule the country, because she had a very challenging task in the last decade. While you are balancing with China, while you are balancing with India, while you are balancing with Americans. Americans wanted something else in Bangladesh. The Chinese, they wanted something else in Bangladesh. They wanted to develop deep sea port. They wanted to develop different other projects that she did not give them. The Americans, they wanted some bases from even in 1998. She did not give them. So she had maintained very balanced approach and cultivated very strong developmental tie with India. Let's develop together. That kind of approach had been adopted. She was willing to join India Act East policy. So my point is that the people, they will definitely remember about the developmental projects. Though the democracy issues were there, but democracy, the people were more unhappy with her associates and member of parliaments. Right. What happened, that there were 24 elections, and then in that election 69 independent candidates, but though they were Awami Leaguers, won the election. So people, the Awami Leaguers, what she had been protected and patronized, were not the right people, and people were not happy. But other Awami Leaguers who were not getting enough chance, they were happy with them. So I'm sure that she will come back again with the same strength as she came in 2008. And because the second very important point, the opposition political forces are not they have very bad track record. Do you want BNP? Do you want Jamaat? What they did in 2006 to 2001 to 2006, that Bangladeshi people will never like it. So point is that unless until you do not have an alternative political force in Bangladesh, then what you will do? And you will not even carry with the army, because now the politically and socially the society is highly mobilized. The civil society is very active in Bangladesh. They will not bear army in power for a long time, as they did not. They revolted in 111 in 2007. You can see. So these are the things. Then democracy will come, and Sheikh Hasina will have a better chance to come back.
Indeed. We'll go back to Mr. Naal Singh Parmar. Naal Singh, as Professor Bharadwaj was saying, I mean, the people are very active now, so the army probably doesn't have or cannot have that kind of control like an army dictatorship. So in this context, this is a fluid situation. So what are the developments? I mean, you have an update, I'm told.
Actually, I want to make two things clear here. One is the role of third front or the student coordinator and the intellectual or the other social leaders who were involved in this movement. Their role will be very crucial in the national or caretaker government. So it is not the all-party government, means the old horse will not be there. The new faces and the neutral faces and the third front faces will be there in the caretaker government, and that will happen because of the power of social media. Social media is very crucial element in Bangladesh politics now. Mainstream media is a second thing, but the people here, Bangladesh is youngest nation than India. The youth, number of youths percentage wise is more here in compared to India also. And they have a mobile, they are educated, they have a means to communicate, means to whatever they don't like, they can say we don't like it and we want to change it. In fact, there were a Digital Security Act. Due to that, many people were afraid about making some videos and comments on the social media. But since the regime, if the regimes change and fears of police and detective branch, if there is not there, then the social media can play a very important role, and that is that will decide the next course of action here in Bangladesh, not the Bangladesh army, because army also can't control the euphoria of student.
Right, exactly. I'll take that to Ramesh. Ramesh, so you were mentioning the Arab Spring. You know, I mean, that is a euphoria to some extent. And we can see that perhaps the heavy hand can't really function against this kind of a movement and in the social media age. So, I mean, what's your prediction? How's this going to play out?
Well, Mark, a couple of things here. One, nature abhors a vacuum. It remains to be seen who fills the vacuum that's being created in Dhaka this evening as we speak. Who will fill in the vacuum left by the exit or ouster of Sheikh Hasina? As Naal Singh was mentioning, it need not or necessarily come from the existing political shades of opinion. It could be someone completely new, and that will be dictated by the civil disobedience movement launched by the students and other sections of civil society. It could be a jurist, a retired justice. It could be somebody from the army background, a civil society member. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that this will take shape in the next several hours or possibly days. As the army chief mentioned, he will talk to the president and go as per the constitution of the country, which lays out the precedents and steps to be taken in times of such crises circumstances. So all eyes on the president as we speak, what he does or does not choose to do, and also the way the political parties respond to this challenge or the crisis in terms of forming an interim national caretaker government till such time as the situation eases to restore full democracy in Bangladesh. Now, that said, from an Indian perspective, Mark, one needs to also factor in what New Delhi might be thinking as we speak, given the circumstances obtaining in its immediate neighborhood. Like I said, there are forces inimical to India's interests. They could, create further chaos in Bangladesh. As I mentioned, there are, many forces in India's neighborhood who might be willing to take, as you mentioned, fish in troubled waters. So we have to wait and watch. That said, also the fear of refugees, people pouring in across the porous border into Indian states in the northeast as well as in Bengal, it remains to be seen. But India would surely be keeping a close tab on the situation as we speak, especially given report that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, now deposed PM Sheikh Hasina, might also be wanting to keep India in the loop.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ramesh Ramachandran, Professor Bharadwaj, Naal Singh Parmar, and Jessica Taneja. Thank you for filling us in with developments that are as they are happening in Dhaka. And for the moment, we're going to conclude this edition of DD India News Hour, but news and updates will continue here on DD India. We'll continue to follow this story, which is developing rapidly in Bangladesh, a political vacuum being created with Sheikh Hasina having been forced to resign and flee the country. There is going to be an interim government there. The army chief has spoken to the country and asked for peace. We shall be following that story closely. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.